Family. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's 8 o'clock. You know what that means. It's time to talk. You see me out different surroundings every week because yeah, we're on the move. We're doing things and making great things happen, but it's all about you. And that is why we are here. So big shout out to my sponsors, Incision. Again, if you haven't gone to their page, incision.care, make sure you go to their page and subscribe. Tell them Time to Talk sent you. Request that demo so you can see what innovation they're bringing to the education side of sterile processing. Also, big shout out to RST Automation. If you haven't been to their page, same thing. Go to their page and do the same thing. Let them know that you got sent there from Time to Talk and that it is you want to see the demo of that as well, so that you can see what new and exciting things they're bringing to the sterile processing field, whether that's more efficiency with you peel packing, more efficiency with you putting trays together. They have a solution that may actually work for your departments. And that is some of what we're talking about today. Collaboration across sterile processing. What does that mean and what does that look like? Last week we had the pleasure of speaking with Warren Niss, and he talked about regulatory standards and what that looks like in a department. But how does that work when you're working in all different aspects, like whether that's endoscopy or you're working with infection control or the OR? These all have to be collaborative things, right? Some of the stuff we talked about was everybody's following their different standard, and if it's ARN versus SGNA versus Amy, how does that look? What does that look like if nobody's talking to each other? So some of that is what we're going to touch on today is how do we get better workflows if we're not working together? What does that collaborative effort actually look like? And as I always tell y'all, I actually reach out to people who are actually actively in the field, seeing and doing certain things. So I wanted to get somebody here that I know actually has a pulse on what's happening in our industry. I wanted to bring somebody who could actually speak to what they see in the field as far as, are these things truly happening? Are you working together to bridge the gap between SBD and the OR? I know that's what the problem has been, is that everywhere I go and I get the same thing. How do you make that relationship better? How do we work and make that relationship better with the OR? Many different ways, many different answers, but it still seems to be our number one issue. I've had people say, how do we get EVS to realize that SBD gets treated like the OR? It should be terminally cleaned and all of these things, but it's not happening. Again, those collaborative efforts. In endoscopy, we had a new document come out, a whole regulation, ST91 come out, and it seemed like it changed everybody's life in an instant. But it should have been, hey, how do we work together to make sure that we're meeting these standards, because this is the new way? How are we bridging the gap in all of these areas? So I reached out to none other than my friend, Melinda Alamari, so that she could come and talk to us about what does that collaboration look like? How do different departments work together for better outcomes? So, as we always do, family, can we give a warm welcome to our friend Melinda, the princess? And here she is. Woo! You see that round of applause? You see it?
That was amazing. I like
that was
it.
amazing, right? The family's here. They are excited about this conversation. Melinda, for those that may be, hiding under a rock and don't know who you are, could you tell them who Melinda is?
Ooh, that's complicated. All right. You want the condensed version? No. The normal Melinda, no, the working Melinda. So I am a clinical education specialist for Healthmark Industries, a Getting a company. I sit on multiple AAMI standards committees. I chair 2 of the AAMI standard committees, packaging and dental. And I also represent the U.S. in the ISO International Packaging Committee. I started as a surgical tech, became a endoscopic service rep for IMS, worked for IMS STERIS for about 8.5 years, moved into management of departments, then education, multiple different roles, and then became the educator and quality control manager for Duke sterile processing. So, and then, kind of graduated over to Healthmark.
So well versed in the industry, like yourself, a lot of us started out as surgical techs and somehow found ourselves in sterile processing and
right?
have not left, right?
Correct.
So you've seen both sides. So you've seen the OR side, you've seen the SPD side. So you've worked in all of these modalities. So why is collaboration? Let's start with the OR. Why is that collaboration so hard? Why is it a common theme across all departments? Like the OR and SPD just can't get it together.
Honestly, I think the biggest problem is that it's a lack of understanding. There is a major gap of understanding of what each party does. I mean, like you said, I scrubbed, you scrubbed, like as surgical techs, like your mindset is just about getting that case done. That silo mentality that we tend to have. This is, I need to get this case done. I need to get my day done and move on, kind of thing. Get patients safely out, do my job, help the surgeon without getting instruments thrown at me.
Right.
Or, doing our little duck and dive maneuver. We're not doing that. But, it's that silo mentality, and what happens in sterile processing, I don't know. They have a bunch of magic machines down there that I give them stuff and I tell them I want it back now. And, that's it. It makes it happen. Like when I scrubbed, I mainly did hearts. And so that was my specialty. And so if we didn't have any hearts, we had to go to other areas. So we had to scrub ortho or eyes, whatever it may be. Right. And then if there were none of those, you had to go to sterile processing before you could go home, that, before that was even an option. So I was grateful to have that opportunity and kind of get exposure to sterile processing. But other than that, I wouldn't really know. And even that, I was exposed, but I didn't understand what the heck happened in it.
Right.
Like the depth and the magnitude, the knowledge these people have to have, nowhere near that. I did decontam and I did assembly, and that was about it.
But see, now that you know, right? So now that you know more in depth of what it is, from a scrub tech, and I had the same thought process before, even though, so in the military, when you do one, you do both. But in the civilian side, there's that we're better than you because we're scrub techs.
Yeah.
But if you try to tell one of them to go down there to do the job, they can't. So, so is that something that should be incorporated where they're shadowing, or it's one of those where I know that departments now are sending people to the OR to watch cases. It's not the same as scrubbing a case, but you get to watch how the instruments are used and, all that kind of stuff. How beneficial would it be to incorporate, like, say, that scrub tech or that nurse to go downstairs and spend some time in sterile processing?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it should be part of all of their onboarding. Right. And so when I got at Duke, we didn't have that. That wasn't part of the program. And so I helped work with the educator for the OR, and we created that process. So when a nurse or a scrub tech joined the team, they would have to come down and spend 2 days in sterile processing. And they would be exposed to decontam and also be exposed to assembly side. I think that's another big mistake, right? We say, oh, come to sterile processing, and all they do is they sit on assembly side. You know what I mean? They don't get the real feel for it in decontam as well. And then I would also, our sterile processing technicians would have to go and spend, 3 days up in the OR watching different cases and procedures so that they get a feel of what those cases are and how it feels when opening stuff and that kind of thing. So helping bridge that understanding between the two.
And I think that's a big part of it. Like you said, if they don't go to decon, then they're not going to understand what the importance of the pre-cleanse and all that stuff is when you're pre-treating your instruments. They're not going to know why we say it's an important step. Yep. They think, like you said, that magic machine just makes everything go away. You can send the instruments down however you want, and it doesn't matter. Yep. But to the point of what Warren was talking about last week, if everybody in the OR is going by, the scrub techs have AST, the nurses have ARN, and everybody's in the ballpark of what should happen, but everybody's different. Mm-hmm. Is it a leadership responsibility to try to tie all of that together?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We all have our standards we follow, right. But that's where your policies come in. And each group of standards talks about, AST has a section for collaboration and stuff. ARN talks about collaboration and, that kind of thing. So that all needs to be a part of the policies as well. And that's where the policies bridge those together. That's the hospital's responsibility to make sure they are taking into account that bridging concept. We used to have a program called Do No Harm or Zero Harm.
Okay.
And, that was like zero. How do we get to zero harm for patients every single time? That was the ultimate goal. And there were different programs and collaborative efforts that were put into doing that. We used to have what was called collab labs. And so I would run, I was in charge of running a collab lab for vendors, right? We all know we have vendor problems with our trays. And they're always our problem childs, right? But to be fair to the vendors, we don't know the pain points they go through. So what our collab lab did was we had a surgeon representative, we had nurses from the OR, surgical techs, sterile processing, and vendors, and we would meet on a bi-weekly basis and talk about what are the big issues that you guys face. This is what we're facing. How do we get to a better understanding or a better outcome? You're delivering your trays late. Okay, let's sit down and talk about it, from a Lean Six Sigma point of view kind of thing.
Okay.
How can we work this out? What are some ways we can come to a better understanding and each group give a little?
Was that leadership driven or was that frontline driven?
They were frontline driven. The concept came from leadership, because we did them for other things different. So if there was a situation where something happened, maybe they're having a problem getting supplies in, they would do a collab lab with supply chain. So we would say, hey, we have an issue with vendors. We want to have a collab lab with vendors, that kind of thing. So, and then, somebody would volunteer to head it.
That's different than the schedule huddle. This is a different separate one where people are actually talking about challenges and things like that. So family, that's something that you may be able to build off of. A great idea that Melinda them had at the different places where the collab lab, we could call it exactly what they called it. And you could pull people in to try to get that collaboration, talk about the challenges, because I think that's another big part of it. We voice our frustrations, but nobody does anything about it. So it's the same problem over and over and over, but nobody's trying to address it because the OR is not going to listen. SPD is not going to listen. Or I follow this and I follow that, and nobody's working toward the same goal, but our goal should be better patient outcomes and patient safety, right? So that's where we get stuck in that, as you said, that little silo of everybody's doing their own thing. So I want to talk about that a little bit more in detail, but we're going to do that right after this break, Melinda. We're talking about collaboration across departments with Miss Melinda Alamari.
Something we heard time and time again was that SPDs really needed a standardized onboarding program.
I strongly feel that losing the connection between the work and the purpose of the work that we do is a key reason why things often go wrong in sterile processing.
One thing that we really focused on in this program is that it needed to be practice-based. People needed to understand what was required in the department, how should they function, what were the steps.
We tried to create this program really linking, here's the task that you have to do, here's some theory behind it, but really here's why you have to do what you have to do.
Understanding the why something is used and how it is used is crucial to connect the dots between the action and our role in patient safety.
Welcome back, family. Welcome back. If you saw that, Incision.care. Incision.care. I know you saw that beautiful demo there. Some of our own. You saw the great Tony Thurman in that video talking about what this program can do for facilities. Again, is 6 modalities across sterile processing, broken down over 21 modules that can actually help shape the roles of what sterile processing is. And based on what we're talking about today, they actually also have an OR module for the OR so that everybody, as Melinda said, knows what everybody's doing and we can work through a lot of the challenges. One of the things I was going to ask that you started answering there is that collaboration thing. Is there other things that people can do to try to bridge that gap as we keep talking about? Because like I said, it's not just whenever I ask the question, that is number one on everybody's list, better improvement of working with the OR. It's always number one on everybody's list. Yeah. And when you think about it, it's going as far back as time, it's been that way. So even doing some of the things you say, are there other things that you've seen work or ideas that you have that people may be able to try?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I did want to touch on really quick, Kenneth, that I think is really important and gets majorly overlooked is when we're talking about collaboration, we tend to just focus on nurses, surgical techs, and OR, right? What about the surgeons? They are such a huge part of what happens in that OR and how that OR runs. Why are we not including them in collaboration? Most of the time we don't think about that, right? So like when I was talking about those collab labs, we had a surgeon representative who came to those collaboration labs. So then he would disseminate that information to all the other surgeons, like at the surgical exec meetings and stuff like that. So, you know, when we talk about our pain points in sterile processing, they don't just get lost on the nurses, and not that the nurses don't care, but there's only so much each section can do. So having all those key players at the table is a huge part of that.
And I think that's the bigger part of it, is who is in the meeting and how is everybody impacted. Like you said, it's not just OR and SPD. The doctors are impacted because if we do something wrong or they do something wrong, it can delay, it can do all these things. And again, like you said, I don't want the instrument flying across the room at me. So so including them in what we call the, you know, some of the problems and how we can, get to some of that. I think that's a very, very, very big part of it. Just still have an issue with the, I guess, I don't know if you saw last week, you know, that we talked a little bit about ARN, and the different, bodies, regulatory bodies. When it comes to recognizing AAMI and, recognizing what they do, and I know you said it goes to the policy. Mm-hmm. How can we better communicate that piece? Because I get it all the time. Like, we don't have time to restring. We don't have time to spray. We've cleaned it good enough. You got to wash it downstairs anyway. And all of these type of things. how do we better communicate what that means if they're not going to come downstairs and actually go in decon and see what happens? You're in the. I see crowds all over the place.
You know what? I
the
threw
framing
it.
was yours.
I threw it on, and I'm like, it's okay. Like this is
We're collaborating.
truly
See, I'm
important.
helping you.
Thank you. You know, straighten your crown, Melinda. Get your crap together. God. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So, I think to your point, Kenneth, like when we look at these different industries that are producing standards, right?
Okay.
You know, like I'm going to speak for Amy because you know, sitting at the table at Amy, we have representatives for AORN there, right? AST, usually it's, you know, they will collaborate with somebody from AORN as well to get that information and stuff. But that representative's there. And when we create the standards, you will see they usually, the AORN mirrors what Amy says. AST will then mirror, follow along as well. So they try to have that collaboration. You know, we have to have the different industries to represent the different bodies of people, right? We can't get away from that because that just wouldn't be fair to have AORN represent surgical techs, right? Like, I wouldn't feel that that was a true representation of my job, and vice versa. So it really comes down to, again, you know, I think it goes back to your point earlier. We all say, oh, you know, our department has no collaboration and they hate each other and they're fighting with each other. But where is the effort put to create those collaborative practices? I'll give you one example, right?
Okay.
I'll give you a lot of examples if you want, but you know, whatever. All right. No, like, you know, we get invited to, like, let's say you're in sterile processing. You get invited to the OR holiday party. The whole department gets invited as well, right? And what do we hear? I'm not going to that. That's for the OR. Oh, that's just for them. I'm not attending that. Why? Why would you not go and start building those bridges with the people in the OR as surgical techs, the nurses? Same thing when we have holiday parties. Why are you not inviting the OR or surgical, like the OR staff, the surgeons to your parties? Why are we not building those bridges? Something so simple as the holiday parties and events. Go, even if you're the only sterile processing person at that party, you are going to be one voice that is going to maybe speak to one person and make that your goal. Make it your goal. Like, just speak to one person about sterile processing and build that connection with one person, because then that one person is going to be an advocate for sterile processing with another person and help them understand. And that's how we start building change. We don't just, it's one person at a time. If you can't get to the masses, you start at one.
That was going to be part of what I know. I'm going to talk about some other areas, but that was going to be one of the last things that I was going to talk about as it pertains to the surgical suite and the operating room. How can, I'll say the hospital in general, how can the hospital, other than parties and stuff, how can the hospital support the frontline staff and building stronger relationships across departments? I know, like you said, that's the holiday party, but when we're trying to build that camaraderie, how can the leadership help foster that?
So I think it's not, I mean, like when we talk about leadership, different levels, right?
Right.
Like leadership of management and leadership of OR directors, OR managers, and sterile processing managers, supervisors and stuff. You know, it comes down to communication is huge. First. Second, you know, take a step. Let's say, for instance, you're going to have coffee, right? I'm a manager of sterile processing. Hey, you know, so-and-so manager of, you know, robotics, or, you know, lead of robotics. Hey, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. You care to join me for coffee? Right? Like, take a step. You've got to break out of that comfort zone and do something to get. So And I talked about this, on a previous podcast with Sharon Combs about my saying that I used to have to tell myself every time I speak in public is, if I always do what I've always done, I'll always get what I've always got. And that can be translated to so much. If we keep doing what we've always done, you're going to get the same results every single
Right.
time. Step out of your comfort zone. Go and grab somebody for a cup of coffee. Sit at a table that you don't know people for lunch, right? Like the OR staff. Go have a seat with them. I know we want to sit with our friends, but drag a friend with you. You know what I mean? Make them
Right.
sit with you,
Right.
right? Like, but I will tell you one of the things too that I found extremely helpful from going from like the C-suite level
Okay.
is getting involved in we used to call them surgical exec meetings. So getting onto your surgical exec meetings, having so they would have a meeting every month for the surgical execs, and that's all the surgeons in the hospital, and like the higher execs, the CEO would be there at the meeting as well. And I used to just go sit in a corner for the first few meetings, kind of like a weird creeper. And they're like, who's this weirdo in the corner? Until they started getting to know like my face more and, that kind of thing, and getting familiar with me. They know who I was. Then I would get on their agenda. And
Okay.
I would spend maybe, do a quick 10-minute brief overview. What happens in decontam? Okay. That's what happens in decontam. And I'm like, that's just 10 minutes. They're like, wait, that's what happens in decontam? No way. There's no magic machine. No. And then, go into the next meeting, I would do assembly, and just like piece by piece, getting them used to that. And then, then I would have like a platform for when I had issues. So, and it would come from the surgeon level down. Right. So
Okay.
it's not me trying to go up. It's them bringing it down to the other levels, which made it so much easier. For example, I had a problem with the OR not putting instruments back into their right containers or
Right.
baskets,
That's
right?
a big one. That's a big one.
They come back empty because everybody started using these universal count sheets where they count everything together instead of using the count sheets we provide them, right? So nobody remembers now these days. Back in my days, we would have gotten shot, you know what I mean?
Right.
But nobody knows what's in their trays, which is sad, because if a surgeon needs something, they can't say, oh, it's in, a minor ortho tray. You can grab that tray, right? There's no help there. So, but anyway, so they just put everything back into one basket. You get empty baskets back. So I did an activity, and I do this activity when we go, when I do talks on point of use cleaning and stuff like that, where we play a puzzle game. And they have a puzzle. So I gave the surgeons all a tiny, like 12-piece puzzle, but I put them on a paper plate. That was their tray. And I
Right.
gave them a picture of it. And I mixed all their pieces up with each other. And I told them that they had 5 minutes to put the puzzle together. And I gave them one that had a turnover and it had all the pieces in it. And one was a turnover and it had all the pieces mixed up. And the surgeons were going crazy. You want to it was the funniest thing ever. And then I had like the OR director come screaming at me, where's my tray? I need it now, turnover and stuff. And, we would like just ramping up the emphasis on them. And then I had an extra instrument tray too. So they had to go and ask their coworkers for the pieces and try and find them. They were going insane for 5 minutes. And I told them, I said, listen, you have 12-piece puzzle. Imagine a tray with hundreds of instruments in it. How do you expect these people to get this back to you on time? And I had 15 to, at the end, it was around 18 surgeons who came up to me and they were like, what do you need from me? What can I do to help you? And so then we started having them talk to their techs, put the instruments back in the right basket, make sure you're doing that, right? And huge difference in the way the trays came back after that.
I'm gonna have to have you bring that to Massachusetts. Let us see that game in person. You know what I mean? Shameless plug. I'm telling you that we're gonna need that.
Here
We're
we
gonna need
go.
to see that. You know what I mean? But just in that alone, how much of that is driven by culture? Because if they're used to doing something, you know, everybody has a department where they say that's just how that is.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we just do it that way, or
Yeah.
something like that. How much of it is driven by culture? I really want to know your answer, but we're gonna know it when we come back from this commercial.
Okay.
Again, everybody, you saw that RST automation, definitely an efficiency tool that can help you in your departments. As we talk about this collaboration, it's one of those things that can help you with some of that sorting and doing all these things that help the department within itself collaborate with each other. That is where we're trying to get people to see where we're giving them the benefits and the tools to help them improve their areas. Right before the break there, we were talking about, you know, Melinda gave great examples of how things can happen where the collaboration can be seen from different aspects. The question before we went to break was, how much of that is driven by a culture of somewhere? Because again, we've all had departments and where people would say that's just how that person is, or we do it that way just because that's how it's always been done. So, you know, the most famous phrase in all of SPD, how do we get people out of those comfort zones? How do we work past that when it's a culture of somewhere that's stopping the collaboration because we know they're not going to change?
So culture is so hard to, well, I'm going to say this, bad culture, right? Because not all culture is bad. There's
Right.
good parts of our cultures that we have in our department, but that bad culture is so hard to change. And it is the biggest hurdle I think every department faces. But it comes from your leadership team building that, you know, having a positive culture, changing that culture, but it also comes from each individual. And I feel like we tend to blame culture on everything else and everyone else, but we don't
Okay.
take this time to stop and look at ourselves. What is the energy you bring to that culture, right? If I walk in the room every day and everybody's like, oh, God, Melinda's here again. Great. Please don't let me be in decontam with her. Please don't let me be in decontam with her. Like, you know what I mean? She complains all day long. That's not a healthy energy I'm bringing to the department. I'm contributing to that nasty culture, right? And
Right.
so when I come into the department, if everybody's like, oh, Melinda's here. Hey, do you want to go to decontam with me? Do you want to be in assembly with me? Like, do you want to help me do this? And, like, that's a major difference because then it becomes, it spreads, you know, like it
Right.
becomes contagious and people don't have that option of being negative and Debbie Downer, right? Sorry, Debbie's. But you know, they don't have to be grouchy all day. And those
Right.
people who are grouchy, you know, you can tend to bring them up. You know, we bring up each other's energy. So I do this other like little activity in one of my other talks where I talk about, you know, culture actually, and we talk about how do we change that culture? What's the energy you bring?
Yes.
Just telling somebody you appreciate them. Right? I come in and I'm like, you know, Kenneth, I really appreciate you having me on your show. It really means a lot to me that you took the time and asked me to come on your show. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Like, that brings your energy up and it brought my energy up, right?
Right.
Like it's a win-win. But we
This is,
tend to blame culture on everyone else and not look at ourselves for it. And
that
I,
reminds me. That reminds me of the speech that at conference I remember Sharon Combs and it just skipped my head just that quick. Jamel Ross. They were talked about sometimes it's you. Like, I mean, like everybody wants to point fingers and say this person, that person, but sometimes you have to take a look in the mirror and say, sometimes it is you.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to take responsibility for your part of whatever that problem is, then it's just going to keep going. So if I'm always the one saying the OR is not going to do, or the OR is this and that, and everybody's like, well, the OR's not going to do it. Like we're not trying to help change anything. That's where I think that part comes in. That it's like, where does the leaders in this situation? But if it's the leader, that's the problem.
Yeah, that one's
You might
But
have a
to your
different
point,
kind of.
sometimes you are the one who smells. You know what I mean?
You know what I'm saying?
Like,
So
you're
we have to talk about
check
things like that.
yourself.
But
Yeah.
then again, that leads me to where we're going now. That was just the OR. We work with other people other than just the OR. So now you're talking about like endoscopy. You're talking about infection and prevention. You're talking about the EVS staff. You're talking about all these other different entities. We spent that time, and this is in real time, family, if y'all see me, we spent all of that time just talking about the OR. We didn't add in
We didn't get to the others.
we didn't add in infection control.
Yeah.
We didn't add in biomed, because now like that the water documents coming out, and water came out. So now who's the team that's collaborating to make sure your water's correct? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
all of these different things. I think we got transportation about the drop. Who's the team that's going to come together on that? So not only are we talking about just this group, so your collab with that group, you're going to need to collab with everybody.
Yeah.
Like, so how do you manage that when you have all of these entities, whether it be EVS, whether it be infection control, you have all of these things, and everybody, again, to our point of last week, everybody follows something different.
Yep.
Whereas it should be, as you said, one of those things that meshes together like an AMI and an ARN that say we have parts that are similar, parts that match up. How do you get people to realize that we're all in the same fight? We're all doing the same things, but the language may be different, but the end goal is the same.
I mean, it's a fantastic point. I think to that point, the biggest thing is getting the key players at the table, right? You're about to write a policy for transportation. Do
Right.
you have the key players at the table, or are you sterile processing and the OR just sitting down to write this policy? Are you talking to materials who you got the dock and receiving and stuff? Are you talking to the transportation company? Are they sitting at the table with you? What is like, are the key players sitting at the table at the right time? I think we need to make sure, like when we're writing policies, once again, if we're talking about meshing everything together and people come together, that's what it takes when you're writing policies, having IP at that table, right? Like, because then we all have different perspectives. No,
Right.
we can't do that. We need to do it this way. Okay, that's all right. Now we need to change the policy to make sure we can accommodate that. But to your point, I think too, one of the things that we tend to do, and this kind of goes with the culture theme as well, because we build this negative culture by doing this and we don't realize we do it necessarily. But like, for instance, we don't think about our upstream and downstream. I put into place a new policy, right, about how we're going to accept scopes from
Right.
endoscopy. I never stopped to talk to endoscopy about the new policy, the new process I'm putting into place. Nobody's ever reached out to them. So now we're just telling them how this process is going to happen. But we don't take in consideration that, hey, now they have to like jump on a trampoline, do 5 flips, and, dive through a window carrying a scope without moving
Right.
it. You know what I mean? Like, we need to make sure we're thinking upstream and downstream. Who's giving us the work and who's receiving our work, right? And
Right.
making sure we're having them, again, part of the discussion, talk about it. This is where, collab labs come in, meetings. we love to have meetings about meetings and not meetings, right? Like
Right.
we always have those. And it's like, why am I even here? Make them constructive meetings. Let's have great conversations and get things done. One of the other key things that I will say that helps build culture and change that culture of ownership in your department, having people take ownership of stuff, is when you have meetings, bring your technicians as leaders to a meeting. Don't just go to your meetings yourself. How are you building your team up if you never expose them to those different areas of leadership, right?
Okay.
I want to build people. That is my job as their leader, as their manager, is to build them up and make them positioned to take my place if I get hit by a bus tomorrow or whatever, right? Or maybe I
No buses. No buses.
okay. All right, fine. I get a promotion. That sounds better. Okay. You know what I mean? But whatever it may be, things happen. So I need to have people in place, but also that is my job, is to build my team. So changing that culture, if you start doing that, people start realizing, hey, when I say we have to do this because of this, it's not just coming from me, it's coming from the departments and what they need, and getting them to understand from a customer perspective, because the endoscopy is our customer at that point, the labor and delivery is our customer, and we're the customer, their customers, having those conversations and stuff. So I think all of those different aspects, I think it really comes down to, Kenneth, is taking a step back. We joke about Othello, right? Like, this is like our bonding thing between you and me, that
Right.
game Othello, right? Where I kicked your butt at. But
Oh my
whatever, we're
God.
not gonna
That was
go
not collaboration.
it was very collaborative on my part. But it's strategic moves, right? Like,
Right.
that is the point with Othello. Like, you don't just it's black and white, but it's strategic moves on how you get to win the game, right? And we've got to look at what we do in a more strategic manner, especially as leadership. You
Right.
know, your hands are a little more tied as a technician, but you still have a voice. Use it, right? Try to get your manager to understand. Take responsibility for more things. Say, hey, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to do that. But move in a more strategic manner so that we can create that collaboration between
But that,
everyone.
but that's why I said what I said earlier about how much of it falls on the leadership. Because, like you said, the front line, they can voice their opinions and they can say, we give out the ideas and things like that. But somebody has to put that in place. So if they're not getting the support on that end, then it falls to the wayside. And I know for a fact, I've been a part of some places where EVS, I mean, let's be honest, EVS is EVS. They're not, going in there with the same mindset of it being like the OR and I need to pay this attention to this and clean it like this. They're not going through that same, checklist that they normally would. So if nobody's holding them accountable for that and they think that they're doing a good job, but everybody downstairs is like, they didn't do this and they didn't do that and they didn't do this, and it falls on deaf ears, then what? That's what I'm saying. Like, so when we're talking about changing and collaborating, and I like to your points of bring the necessary people at the table. Because I did that with one of my last facilities. I had to get all of the EBS people together so we could create the policy together. Like, this is what we're going to be doing. As it states here in the AAMI, you are supposed to hide us weekly, this monthly, blah, 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 and put it in the policy so that everybody know where we stand. But you have a lot of people that don't talk to the other entities. Yep. They don't, they don't even communicate on a daily basis, or if something's wrong, it's only when something catastrophe happens that we want to call a meeting. It's like we're not.
We like put out fires, right? We don't prevent them.
Like I don't want to be the only one from SPD at the OR party. so I'll just keep letting it happen the way it happens, because I don't want to cause waves. I don't want to be that only one to say something.
I think it's a comfort zone, right?
Okay.
Like, it's so hard for most humans, not every human, to do stuff out of their comfort zone, right? To take that step. and to say, okay, I'm just going to do this because I know it's for the better of whatever, right?
Right.
We want to stay in our little comfort zone, but I think, to your point with leadership, it's a hard situation. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh no, keep going, blah blah blah. If your leader, your manager themselves is the problem and nobody sees that, I'm just going to tell you, find another job. Because like, in truth, like, it is your manager.
That is Melinda's thought process. I did not tell you to quit your job. I did not say that.
I'm like,
but no, I get what you're
find
saying,
another
though.
hospital, like, because if your leader is the toxic, because we've all been there.
Right.
We've all been in those departments, and that's literally what needs to happen. Now, I am a strong advocate of, you need to learn from everybody you come encounter with, right?
Okay.
So even those crappy leaders, I'm gonna say, like, even those, they can teach you something. They teach you who you never want to be as a leader, right? I take pieces from them, and I'm like, I will never do that to my employees, right? Because I know how it felt to me. And, then you have great leaders. You're like, oh my God, I'm so going to use that, right? And I'm going to be just like that person, and I'm going to do that, So don't always look at every situation as a stepping stone to getting to your end goal and your end point. So I don't mean to tell everybody just quit your jobs, but I'm just saying, go, if your leader's the problem, you've got to find another pasture to graze in, because that's what it's going to take.
Family, you heard it. We're here with Melinda, and she's giving us some great tidbits on how to start the process of collaboration. I have a few more things for Melinda, and we're going to get to those right after this break. I know you saw that. If you want to be in those conversations as the great Melinda, the Sharon Combs, the Jamel Rosses, and I dare even say me, if you want to be in those categories where you are the person up there giving that speech and everybody wants to hear and hinging on every word, and you want to improve the way that you speak, definitely reach out to UCDI, that language mastery, so that you can get yourself in that next level of your experience of speaking. It's definitely a course worth taking, and I definitely reach out and let them help you over there. You also saw the Time to Talk is still available on all platforms, but learn to listen so that people are willing to talk is definitely on the way, and I think it's gonna be about 2 weeks, and we will drop the official book will be out, but definitely we're going to be putting up some links for the pre-order of that one. And it's about intentional conversation. I think people get confused with listening and hearing. So I wrote a book about it, what that means. Intentional conversation. Learn to listen so people are willing to talk. Coming soon. Definitely going to be available on all platforms, just as as y'all supported me on the first one. I think this one is a definitely a good read, and I look forward to seeing what the feedback is. Melinda, so
Wait, before we get started, was that your drum roll? Did you
I
do
did. That was a drum roll. That was a drum roll.
Oh, okay.
You know, I had to get a drum roll, you know, just to let people
Right.
know like, the book is officially here upon us. The pre-orders are now starting, and you know, I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my signed copy.
You know, I definitely the princes don't get a signed copy. Nobody gets a signed. Bestie, I know you're watching. My fault because you're gonna get me in trouble. So you try to get me in trouble. But no, definitely. Some of this, and even with some of that, we don't often hear what our employees are saying and what their issues are, and we focus on what we want to focus on as far as leadership goes, and to try to change that. So, with that said, what is something that you wish all departments knew about the challenges of working in sterile processing? I'm giving you the floor to say, what do you think, or what do you wish everybody knew? Like, I know what you said, like, as far as like when the OR comes down, we kind of pigeonhole them and put them on a table, let them put together a tray. They never see the behind the scenes of what it actually takes in decon and what that process is. Because like you said, hey, a magic thing says, hey, I need this right back, and you get another one. And that's not reality. Like, that's not what really happens. And infection control, they say certain things, and you're like, we can't do that. You know, like we can't do these things. So what are some things that you feel like people should know about sterile processing and how it would affect that collaborative effort if they knew these things?
I think that people should know that sterile processing, the amount of knowledge that the technicians have to have. I mean, you got to think about this. We need to know what thousands, I will dare say millions of instruments, you know, like we have to know all these different types of instruments and the different names that
Right.
everybody loves to call them, you know, like a claw grasper is a mother-in-law, like
Everything.
okay, you know, it's like the different nuances for those instruments, how to inspect all of them, the key points you're looking at.
Right.
We're, you know, we have to know microbiology. We've got to know, you know, anatomy. We have to know like so many different scientific terms and concepts. Water now. We're now becoming water boys. You know what I mean? Like it's insane. There's so much that we need to know. And I think unfortunately we get such a bad rap of just being, you know, unfortunately those people downstairs, right? Like, or, you know, dishwashers or whatever. And
Right.
it blows my mind how much knowledge an average sterile processing technician has to have. And, you know, and yeah, granted, you know, we're all not like major book smart as a level of, you know, PhD. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying technical wise and hands-on skills and knowledge of different areas. I mean, it's a melting pot of the different things we need to know. And I think people don't understand what it takes and what goes into it.
I hear that you reference it because I know people say it all the time. You know, they're glorified dishwashers, and you know, the OR techs feel like they are at a higher level of education and all these type of things. How do we bring that, other than, like you said, getting people involved and getting people down there to see it? What else can we do? I know, like when sterile processing week, we have a whole bunch of people parade through, and they're trying to see what's happening and all these type of things. But that's, you say that micro piece of, hey, I saw it. Y'all do a lot, but they don't know.
Yeah.
What else can we do to try to enhance the knowledge of that?
So I think some of the things that we can do is, you know, speaking on another terms of collaboration, like we had the surgeons come down into sterile processing. So we had, they were called, I can't remember what the acronym was, but it was like basically partners of processing or something like that. POPs.
Okay.
Something towards that effect.
Okay.
And they would come down and they would sign up. You had two options. Either you took option A, was just come down and do a tour of sterile processing, and then they would also give an in-service on a tray that they used. and explain to the staff what those instruments are used for. And then also they had option B, where if they had more time, right? Because we blame them for like, oh, you never want to come to sterile processing. But I mean, these people are trying to help people. Like, we got to give them some break too, right?
Right.
And then they would come down, they would tour the department and also sit down and put a tray together with one of the technicians and then do an in-service with the staff. So depending on their time, they could pick, right? So that was one option, like just to help get them to understand more. Some other options or things that we can do is just, I think in the, I go into hospitals and I see where they have like posters of sterile processing. Where are they? They're down in the basement where nobody goes. And it's like,
right.
Well, this is beautiful, but do the families of the patients know, the people who are behind the work that, the surgeon who is putting, helping their loved one, do they know the hard work that these people are? Let's get that out into the public. Like, let's teach them and show them in that manner. What is it that sterile processing does?
I like that a lot, Melinda. I appreciate you coming and giving us this insight, because I think it is an important thing. It's not a us thing. It's not a they thing. It's a we. It's everybody together that has to, I think when people think of patient safety or the patient outcome, they only think about if something went wrong when the doctor did something wrong.
Yep.
Not about the instruments could be wrong, not about it could have started something from the actual processing, or the environment was wrong, or the water was bad. They don't think about all of that. They think about the surgeon's hands, because again, on TV, that's what they glorify. We see the Grey's Anatomies and all these ERs, and it's all about the doctor. Like, the drama's thrown in there, but it has nothing to do with sterile processing, has nothing to do with EVS. It's all about if the doctor did something wrong, and people see that, and that's what they tend to lean toward. But to your point, why not put the posters where people can see it? Why not do something where everybody can walk through and not, and I know that you say that people say can't have big groups or whatever, but bunny suit them up. Let them stand back there and see how long it takes to clean a scope, or see how long it takes to clean a Da Vinci arm that has, 15, 30 minutes with one arm. And people like, no, we need that back right now. So I think that collaborative part is going to come from us partnering, like you said, partnering together, doing some of the collab labs, putting something like that in place where people can actually physically see what happens. And until we can do things like that, the culture will be the culture, and we'll keep having the same issue when I go to places, or you go to places, they say the OR and us just don't get along. And you're like, did y'all not learn anything?
Yeah. Have you not listened to anything I've been saying? No.
But
they've got to break out of that. And before we end, just want to say one more thing to think about. Collaboration is not just with other groups. Managers and leadership need to collaborate with their team, right? Build that collaboration individually. Show them what it looks like so that they can build it forward.
And I like that a lot. It does start with you and your department. If y'all don't even get along, how you expect to get along with somebody else? And I get it. I do get that a lot. So that part is that the building stones does start with you in your departments. Yeah. And leaders, if you're here, please try to incorporate some of this stuff. Or if you have questions, Melinda, how can they find you if they wanted to talk to you further about some of this?
Sorry, I'm in witness protection program. I'm just kidding. No, you can reach me.
Don't repeat her name out loud.
At ML.
Or is that your real name?
Yeah, you never know. I would tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. No, I'm just kidding. All right. It's mlamari@hmark.com.
Okay.
Or packagingprincess@hmark.com.
You see that? Packagingprincess@hmark. Use that one. We want to make sure, because if you've been to a conference, the crowns are out.
Yes,
Melinda makes them out. The crownies show up in full force. It's a beautiful thing, but that's that collaboration. I love it. Hey, family, it's been a time to talk. We have Melinda here with us, giving us the lowdown on what collaboration looks like from every level and how it does impact a patient outcome. If you're not on the same page with the other departments and other teams in your facility, how can, and I dare say, if you're not even on the same page in your department, how can we expect those outcomes to be where we want them to be? So again, go take some of these back to your team. Think about ways that you can impact other departments and making sure that y'all are all on the same page. And let's try to come together. Whether you call it a collab lab or you call it whatever you call it, it's things to think about on how we can get people talking, how we can get people moving in the right directions, and dare I say, how can we change the culture of a department? Melinda, I appreciate you. I thank you for coming, and I'll definitely see you in Kentucky.
Yep. See you
And
at
we'll
HSBL.
collab sooner, but we're going to talk about that right now.
When you wear a crown.
When you can come and wear a crown to Massachusetts.
No, are you wearing a crown to HSBL?
Yeah, I wear mine. I'm
Okay.
actually, I think I've outgrown the crown because now I'm about to have the vendor one, and I'm going to get a fellow. So I don't know. They don't have a crown for that.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm just saying.
Wear
Now
a
that I'm a
crown,
vendor,
wear
now
a
that-
crown and a sash. How about that?
Now that I'm a vendor, I get to add another set of initials, and then I get a sash. And when I do get designated a fellow, then I have another set. So we got to come up with something. We got to work out something. See, how the collaboration still working. Everybody, it's been a time to talk. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for
having
Incision.
me.
Thank you to Incision. Thank you for RST Automation and family. Same time next week. I'll see you. Thank you.
Bye.